Playing Bigger, Playing Beautiful, the heart-centered way, where entrepreneurship meets spirituality, explores the intersection of personal fulfillment, spiritual growth, and business success. This podcast delves into the idea that entrepreneurship isn't just about profits or growing small to medium-sized businesses. It's also about embracing purpose, meaning, and inner growth. Each episode features conversations with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and spiritual practitioners who share their journeys of building businesses that align with their highest values and deepest callings.
I'm your host, Debbie Zita, best-selling author, meditation guide, Australia's leading heart-centered success coach, creator of the 6 Selves model of self-inquiry, and founder of the Heart-Centered Way, dedicated to helping heart-centered humans cultivate more time, energy, money, and wisdom.
Welcome, Miriam. Thank you so much for being here. Can you please let the audience know who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so my name's Miriam Sandkuhler. I'm the CEO of Property Mavens. We are a multi-award winning industry recognised advocacy firm. So we help clients buy and sell real estate so they can seamlessly move into the next chapter of their life.
Beautiful. Can I ask you, Miriam, what does playing bigger, playing beautiful mean to you?
I guess it means the bigger part for me is just constant improvement, just self-assessment, improvement, reviewing, assessing, testing, and then continuing that role. Big doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest in the industry or anything like that. It's not something I've aspired to. I'm not driven by ego about having to have, the biggest company, the biggest team, the biggest number of people. With that, as you know, with people come challenges and all sorts of things. Yeah. So I suppose big to me is that's what I would determine in terms of big. And then I suppose the beautiful thing is just doing what makes your heart sing. Doing what you feel passionate about, doing what you can really dedicate and commit your cause to.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thank you so much. What inspired you to become an entrepreneur and how did you get started?
Yeah, look, originally years ago, I was an employee. I worked for a number of firms. I had sales roles that I was really good at. And I'll never forget one managing director after having had an exceptional year and having made them incredibly wealthy. His comment to me was, "We paid you too much." Typical old bloke speaking to a female, he's a bit of a dinosaur. And I just thought, I went, you know what, bugger you. And he had every intention of, if I was going to continue with them, adjusting my income down accordingly, because he, through his own filters, didn't think I should be earning as much money as I was, which I thought was really interesting. And it's not the first time I've come across that sort of chauvinism. So I started a bit of a journey, ironically, setting up a couple of mobile coffee carts. That was my first step into running my own business. That was interesting, not profitable by any means, but it was good experience to understand the things that needed to be involved in setting up a business from scratch. Then also, securing a second site, getting staff on board, managing staff. Is it profitable? Is it viable? Does it have longevity? And then jumping out of that, ultimately ended up in advocacy. And it wasn't something I particularly aspired to do, but I'd lived interstate for a number of years. I'd been working in the capacity of a buyer's agent over there. I came back to Melbourne. I ended up being chronically sick for a couple of years and basically unemployable in real estate. And so the business came out of necessity. It's like, well, I'm not employable because they're going to flog me 6 days a week. My health didn't permit that. What can I do that I know? And hence Property Mavens was born.
Such an amazing story. And I want to touch on that. This is so timely. I just started reading a book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Women Living Deliciously. I think it's by Florence Given. I'll make sure that I add in the links as well. She talks a lot about what you were talking about in terms of the gender disparity. And it's not something I've ever experienced directly. So I can't even imagine what that would feel like.
Mm.
And to me, it's almost unimaginable. You know the place I come from, which is all about, love and light to every being and equality for everybody. So it
Yeah.
doesn't even compute in my mind that we wouldn't do that. But look, we need people like you who've been through that experience and can share with, other women and also men that does happen.
Mm.
A better way, needs to happen in order for us to move things in a direction that is fair and equal.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
look, I guess at the time, necessity breeds invention. In this case, it was, what's the solution? What am I confident in? What can I do? What do I know that I'm good at? And I was very fortunate that I'm an all-rounder. I'm pretty good at every aspect of the business, maybe not the SEO side and the tech side, but you outsource things as you need to. But I've been able to have some, experts on my side that I've outsourced to over the years and I've worked with over the years. But I can do a lot of the hands-on stuff myself. But just the reality is I shouldn't be. My time's better spent doing other things. But it's been, it's been a journey.
Yes, amazing. What problem does your business solve, and how did you identify that as an opportunity?
Yeah, look, I guess when I started in Melbourne with my business around 2012, the concept of a buyer's agent was still fairly embryonic at that stage. There weren't a lot of us. There weren't a lot that were good at what they did. I have a financial planning background, so I take a financial planning approach to property investing and buying any real estate because it is an asset class and it's imperative to understand what that asset class represents. And so, for me, it was about how can I help clients make really good property decisions while protecting and advocating for them in the process. And then making sure that they're clear around their objectives, their goals, what are they trying to achieve, what's their time frame, and then implementing it for them. Whether it's a home they want to buy or whether it's an investment property, fundamentally the caliber and quality of that asset still has to be really good to be able to grow significantly in value. So having an expert on your side who knows and understands that is quite integral in terms of making good financial decisions around real estate.
Absolutely. And I think especially because those times in our lives can be quite emotionally driven.
Very.
We need to have people who are grounded and in the know to help to guide and support us with the knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And certainly in real estate and the how it's designed, particularly in Victoria, whether it's the selling tactics of selling agents or the pressure of an auction, people don't make good decisions when they're emotional. And that's where having someone independent and objective on your side, basically in your corner, makes a really big difference.
Yeah, it's only something I've learned about in the last couple of years, and I wish I knew earlier, but yeah, that's okay. These things come into our lives at the right time. You did discuss this briefly before, but can you walk us through the early stages of your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so it was very much, what can I do? What do I need to do? What systems do I need to create? I did a bit of a business accelerator program very early on, and one of the main things that did was help me, I suppose, create a profile, and I did that through publishing a book very early on. So I wrote my best-selling book called Property Prosperity. I was able to leverage off that to build referral relationships and to basically put it out in the marketplace and go towards building my profile. And then it was all the structuring of everything underneath. So, over the years, I've had multiple iterations of a website, which lots of people would do. I've had multiple iterations of CRM systems and, all the technical side of how do you put it all together. Like I said, I'm pretty good at everything across the board. It was never a case of, I don't know how to send out an invoice. Who do I need to get to do it? So I've certainly had admin and support staff, and I still do over the years. The extent to what their role has been has varied depending on whether they've been on the ground in the country or if they've been a virtual assistant. And obviously we've had COVID in that time frame. So yeah, I'm very systems based. I'm very, cross the T's, dot the I's, tick the box, follow a process. Tweak the process, improve the process, refine the process. And that to me means that, you've got a good chance of replicating the service consistently and doing it in a manner that clients are receptive to and comfortable with as well.
I'm curious. Thank you so much for sharing. How did you find COVID? Was COVID a positive or negative experience for you in terms of business?
Look, ironically, COVID in Victoria created pockets of very high demand. So
Mhm.
when we were locked down, we were locked down.
Mm.
There were still people insanely buying property sight unseen at the time. When everyone was locked down in Melbourne and couldn't literally leave our house in Melbourne, I was still able to buy property for clients, say in Bendigo or Ballarat, because I had team members down there that were able to help. And then when the lockdown stopped, I'd banked up, a wait list of clients that we hit the ground running as soon as COVID finished, because the markets were going to escalate as a result. So ironically, though it was an incredibly stressful period, the lockdowns were incredibly difficult, particularly, if you're single and living on your own. I had a lot of friends in a similar situation where initially the lockdown did not consider anyone who lived alone.
Yeah.
It assumed everyone had a partner, it assumed everyone had family. So they were extremely negligent in neglecting a significant size of the population, people of all ages, basically, who lived alone.
Yeah.
So that was pretty tough. But ironically, my business did extremely well in those couple of years.
The balance, perhaps, that you had something to kind of sink your teeth into and focus on, and saw that thriving in the end. But yeah, it certainly was a challenging time for us in Victoria, and obviously many parts of the world as well. Miriam, what key strategies helped your business grow the most?
Well, definitely the accelerator program and putting everything in place, as I said. And it's just constantly being out there, constantly doing what you need to do to get your name out there, get your profile out there, get people, for me, I've done a lot of media. I have my best-selling book. So I think the media commentary really helped me in terms of getting the name and the brand out there. But definitely you have to have a foundation. You've got to be able to have systems and processes and automation in place to accommodate you as and if and when things get busier, because you need to be able to, it's that delicate balance of getting out there, getting the work, then all of a sudden you're overworked and you're not doing what you need to do to promote yourself, and it goes like this.
Yeah.
So the challenge is automating some of the stuff, ideally, so that you've got as little of the up and down as possible and more of the sort of consistent, steady growth.
Yeah. And to me, I call that the sweet spot, which is, we're coming back to checking in with yourself and going, is it, how's everything going? Let's keep going in this direction. Is this still working? Is this still working? And it's a constant. Yeah. Can you share with us a little bit about your media journey? Because I've heard little bits as we've had conversations in the past, but I'd love to find out a bit more if you're happy to share.
Yeah, look, it's really, media is about continually coming up with story pitches for the journalists. So, you're literally having to create a story idea for them generally and putting it to them to get your name out there. And then, creating the material and making it available to them or being interviewed accordingly. So it's a lot of hard work, actually. I wouldn't recommend engaging a media or a PR company to do it for you. They can be incredibly expensive with little to no results. So again, it's that how well do you know your material? How well do you know your market? How well do you know your topic? What are the sorts of things you can talk about? I mean, in my book, a lot came out of that. So I was able to talk about chapters of the book, sections within chapters of the book, concepts within those scenarios. I was able to use case studies. So, for me, the journey of writing the book was probably a 6 months journey, and it was a really challenging process. But out of that came a lot of material, whether it's blogs or whatever, other collateral that I've created as a result.
Yeah, it's quite a rewarding process, especially I think it's that tangible feeling of holding it in your hands.
Yeah. It's got, like, my writing coach always talks about thug value. We can read a book on Kindle nowadays, but it's not the same as having an old copy in your hand and highlighting it. So I'm sure now.
What's it? Thud value.
Thug value.
That's very cute. I love that. I'm gonna be borrowing that. Can you tell us, how do you differentiate your brand from your competitors?
Yeah, so unfortunately the market's been flooded in the last 5 years by what I call a lot of fake buyer agents. These are all people who naively have been told if they've spent 8 or 10 grand on an online course that anyone can be a buyer's agent, you can make ridiculous amounts of money for nothing. So over 3,000 people have stupidly spent that money, and 95% of them fail and get nowhere. And unfortunately, if you're 1 minute an Uber driver and next minute you're an expert buyer's agent, never having worked in the industry, never having bought real estate, never actually not understanding the inner workings of a real estate agency, and you're out there expressing and marketing yourself as an expert, I find that incredibly distressing. There are a lot of these people from those courses that are now these big national firms where they don't have staff on board. They have contractors, but none of these contractors are adequately licensed. They don't come under their professional indemnity insurance. So they're outsourcing the most important part of the role to these so-called contractors who are happy to run around and, make their quick money. And I'm hearing feedback from agents who are shocked because they've dealt with me for over a decade, and all of a sudden they've got these cowboys coming in, buying stuff sight unseen, putting in offers, paying 10% over the price, and unfortunately in some instances, and a lot of them getting away with it. And the client doesn't even know they've been railroaded until it's too late. The property's been bought, and then all these problems present itself, and then, well, who are they going to sue? Unfortunately, out of that, I've become an expert witness for clients who've come across and dealt with buyer's agents like that.
Okay.
So I've had that role that I've been able to fulfill. Unfortunately, it's not something I aspire to. But where I'm different is I'm not high volume McDonald's. We're small, we're boutique. We tailor strategies to the individual. Whoever you work with within the business, whichever advocate will see it through from beginning to end. We don't outsource it to a junior. We don't outsource it to anyone overseas. If someone engages me, I'm the one working from beginning to end, and they're getting my expertise all the way through.
Yeah, amazing. I'm just wondering, is there a question other than the obvious, which is, how long have you been in the industry for, if you're meeting someone for the first time in this space? Other than that, though, what should people be looking out for?
So on my website, under the blog, so this is propertymavens.com.au, under the blog section, I've got a blog about fake buyer agents and how to spot them.
Right.
I've got a blog about, is it always good to engage someone who's cheaper? Because a lot of these people with no experience, I call them basically kindergarten level, they'll come in and offer a really cheap price because they've got nothing to deliver. They've got no expertise or experience to deliver, so they have to buy business by offering an incredibly cheap price, which should be an incredible red flag in its own right. Having said that, there's the other lot who still have absolutely no experience, but they still have the audacity to charge the same fee as me, and people fall for it. I had a situation where somebody engaged one of these fake buyer agents. She'd maybe now been doing advocacy for the last 4 or 5 years. The agents love her. She's got an incredible reputation for overpaying all the time. So they send her all the off-market stuff. And that was her big catch cry that 95% of what I buy is off-market. Just because it's off-market doesn't mean it's good property, doesn't mean it's priced well, doesn't mean it meets the brief. And in every instance, because she doesn't know how to price real estate, she would overpay, which is why the agents love her, unbeknownst to her. And at one stage, she overpaid by $370,000 on a property.
Oh, wow.
So the example on the blog is that, sure, someone saved $10,000 on their fee by engaging her, say, instead of me, but that poor person would have overpaid by $370,000. So, I've got several blogs under the buyer's agent category that people can read about that sort of thing. But there are 16, 17 points about fake buyer agents and red flags that people need to be aware of.
Yeah, so important. I'm so glad that you've got that resource, and it happens, I think, unfortunately, in every industry, which then I think tarnishes the industry's name.
Oh yeah, there's always someone whose pure motivation is money, and the person who's created the course, it's all about money, nothing else, despite the facade of, we want to put really good people out there. But look, being an advocate, I say a buyer's agent is like a financial planner for real estate. You're not a selling agent. It's not transactional, but all of those people who've done this non-accredited course have come in and they've made it transactional. They've made it like what a selling agency would do. They've made it high volume. And in doing that, they've taken the advice component out of it, and it's become about them making money, not about good advice and a good result for the client. And, when you get a company coming in and going, right, this week we're going to focus on Bendigo, and 16 or 17 of their little contractors all then pile in at the same time, they drive the prices up because they're all competing against each other to get the deal. And if 16 of them are all scrabbling to get that one client a property, or 2 or 3 clients a property, and they're driving up prices to get the business so they get paid, I have a real issue with that.
Yeah, wow.
And so then the bigger
With
company
integrity.
beat their chest about how the market's gone up, and they spotted it, but they've made the market themselves through piling into it with all of these advisors or these contractors. So, there's so much smoke and mirrors that goes on. But if you really understand what's going on and what's driving the result and how they're getting the result, because they're creating the demand because of the fact that they're just all piling in, it's actually
Wow.
quite scary.
I'm just processing what you're sharing because it's just kind of wild to me that
Oh, it is. It's
people do
wild
this.
to me. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. But it happens, and it's important that we know about it and that we're armed again with that wisdom and the knowledge to know how to navigate. Again, especially something like this, which can be so emotionally driven. So if you don't
Yep.
know, you don't know.
Yeah, and I guess it's the high pressure sales tactics, the sign up now and we'll give you a discount on your fee, oh, I've got the right property for you. This isn't an off the shelf business. This is supposed to be advice, and no one should be working with anyone who doesn't have formal property investing qualifications.
Yeah.
So you want to be an accredited property investment advisor or a qualified property investment advisor. They are formal qualifications that can be done. But most of these, someone 1 minute I'm a carpenter, next minute I'm an expert buyer's agent, and we're just going to churn you out and put you into anything we can, and then tell you what a great job we did because we drove the market because all our team overpaid in the first place.
Yeah, well, you've got to find out how long they've been doing it for and what the track record is behind it. Yeah.
Well, it's understanding the smoke and mirrors. And in my book, Property Prosperity, I talk about some of that smoke and mirrors and what people need to be aware of.
Okay, fantastic. And I think we'll add some links as well where people can purchase that. I'm assuming Amazon and a few of those places as well. Miriam, you may have covered this already, but what was the biggest challenge that you faced as an entrepreneur and how did you overcome it?
It wasn't necessarily one big challenge. It was lots of little challenges along the way. And for me, it's about tenacity and resilience. By no means was it easy. It didn't mean it was frustrating. Challenges could be 1 minute I've got an agreement on a deal, next minute the agent pulls the rug out from under me and they've given it to someone else and gone behind my back, and the whole thing's fallen over. The other challenge is that, I've got a staff member who breaches a employment contract and decides to steal all my IP, and I've got to take legal action. So I think everything for me is about tenacity. And, just looking at that situation and going, right, what are my options? What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? What are the implications? What will this take? Is it worth the energy, the time, the effort? Is it better off to move on? And I know not everyone has that, I remember as a kid, particularly hated maths, particularly doing maths in high school. In Form 5, I'd get so frustrated because I just didn't have a mathematics brain. And I'd sit there and I'd look at it and I'd burst into tears because I was frustrated. Then I'd take a breath and I'd sit there and I'd look at it again and I'd burst it. And I might have gone through 2 or 3 or 4 times of me doing that before I got it, and then I'd move on to the next one. So I think as a kid when I was younger, and particularly as a teenager, having the capacity to keep doing that and just keep going carries into being an adult. And then the journey of life, you come across adversity and you have to build resilience around that. So I guess it depends on the individual's own mettle and capacity to deal with things. And not everyone should be self-employed. Not everyone should be running a business. I know as an advocate, I've got franchisees and I use artificial intelligence to vet them to see whether or not they've got the right levels of emotional intelligence and all the different skill sets that they need to be an advocate without being too heavily weighted in one section. Yes. So, for example, we don't want someone who's competitive aggressive because A, they're going to bully the client to get an outcome, and they're highly competitive and driven by their own ego and their own need to get a win. That does not make a good advocate, and I can tell you they're the people who've gone and done this online course, and they're out there calling themselves experts, and they're the ones where their clients don't have good experiences. So it's just, do you have the capacity to do what needs to be done in this business. And a lot of those people I've talked about can't. They might be good at analysis, but they don't know how to deal with a client who's sitting there full of anxiety and doesn't want to move forward because they're panicking about ABC.
Yeah, different skill set, the emotional intelligence and the awareness needs to be.
Yeah, and because people are emotionally driven in terms of the process, and more so when buying a home, you have to be able to understand how to manage and work with them in that emotional state to help them go beyond where they're at, to help them keep moving forward. And majority of people don't have those skills.
Yeah, yeah, so important. How do you handle setbacks or discouragement in your business? Similar question.
I guess it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just so used to, okay, move on, what's the next step?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not draining, doesn't mean it doesn't, suck the lifeblood out of you at times and drain your energy. It's just, for me, it's always what's the issue? What are the options? What's the way to navigate things moving forward? But how do I now proceed?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the option you choose isn't always going to be the right one. But, part of it too is getting advice from the right people at the right time, depending on what the situation is, and then moving forward accordingly.
Yeah. And that's how you come to this point where you are in your business and your career, because you've had that ability to keep going and to be tenacious.
Yeah, and also the right advisors around you and the right guidance makes a really good difference. So you've got to really refine your, I suppose, for want of a better word, your team and your board of directors, your sort of board of directors in an unofficial capacity that you draw on for the different things, whether it's legal advice or marketing advice or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that's
Accounting
great
advice.
Yeah, all the different little pieces that we always need to have in place.
Yeah.
Miriam, how did you secure initial funding, and what advice do you have for entrepreneurs seeking capital?
Yeah, look, I did the bootstrapping. So I've never applied for business finance. I can't comment on that. I did the bootstrapping, and I think because I was unwell, a really wise decision I'd made when I was younger was to take out income protection, because what it did, it gave me a year's worth of consistent income coming in whilst I was building my business from scratch and bringing on the odd client here and there, to be able to get that up and running. So on the one hand, I had money coming in. On the other hand, I had chronic fatigue. I had to do what I could do in the time that I had available with the levels of energy that I had, and just eventually, slowly over time, it built up and I got better, and it got really, really busy.
I can relate to that journey with the bootstrapping and also being unwell. A huge part of it for me was I had spurts of energy for an hour or two, and then I would have to go and rest.
Yeah.
And it was, you're not really employable. I'm just going to take a nap. Excuse me, I'll be back soon. So it was, how do you find a way to make it work for you? So then you almost have to become creative and innovative in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, like I said, the option for me straight away was I'm not employable in the industry. What can I do? And it wasn't what can I do to fill in time and have a little bit of cash coming in. It's like, how do I replace the income I've been on? What do I need to do?
Yeah.
And, you've got to have a relatively high risk profile to do that, because not everyone can cope with the financial pressure that comes with it. But I'm pretty prudent with my money. I'm not someone to spend it unwisely, and so that comes to helps me when it comes to managing cash flow in the business and all of those sort of costs as well. So you've got to be willing to take the risk. With the risk comes a reward once you continue to go over all the hurdles that you'll have to jump just simply being in business by yourself.
Yeah, totally agree. And again, we did speak about this, but anything else to share around how do you manage cash flow and financial stability while growing your business?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always, you've got to do budgeting, you've got to get multiple quotes, you've got to weigh return on your investment, depending on what you're doing, whether it's setting up a website, whatever the case may be, the functions of it. So you've got to really dive into those sorts of things when you're setting it up, and what do I bring in at what time? What's the priority? What's this going to cost versus what's that going to cost? And then from a management point of view, I'm really good at just shoving money away in a savings account, giving myself a fortnightly income or drawing, for want of a better word. That's at a particular minimum that I live off through the year, and then subject to profitability at the end of the year determines what else comes my way. So I'm not one to lead an extravagant sort of superficial life of flashy cars and jewelry and clothing, and that's just not me anyway. So and because I'm pretty prudent with money, great, if I'm going to do something and splurge on a holiday to Europe or something like that, it's well and truly within my capacity to do it based on how the year's, going, and then doing a quarterly assessment, looking at the figures each quarter. Mine is a seasonal industry. We have quiet periods and peak periods. And then knowing and understanding, how that's going to impact cash flow at different times of the year. And, you yourself with your coaching, people come into a new year and they're like, right, I need to make some changes this year. And, that's quite possibly your busy period. So,
yeah.
And if you're coming into a quiet period, it's like a squirrel, you're hoarding your nuts.
Absolutely.
And you're saving them for a quieter, a bit of a barren winter.
Totally. And then just reminding yourself when it is quiet, look, you've got the numbers there. You can see over the years what's been happening. This is cyclical, because I sometimes can fall into that trap of, oh my goodness, what's happening? And what's happening. We can predict this. So I don't know if you have that, but
yeah. And that may be the time to go and have a holiday because it's quiet and, you're not going to be that busy anyway. So, and you'll see a lot of real estate agents or buyers agents go away in winter for a 1 month break, and they go off overseas where it's warmer and come back ready for the next cycle.
Makes perfect sense, which is actually a good segue into this, which is how do you maintain work-life balance while running your business?
Yeah, I guess recently, it's only very recently that I've sort of taken off one afternoon a week, sort of on a Wednesday afternoon, and that just becomes me time, whatever that might be. It's a combination of bringing in some exercise, trying to look after yourself and eat well. I do energy work, for want of a better word, so just making sure that, I'm sort of starting the day, in a nice, calm, harmonious manner. It doesn't necessarily mean that's how I'll be all day and how I'm going to end the day.
At least we started that way.
I can be a bit fiery. And I like things to go the way I want them to go. So, there can be consequences sometimes if they don't, in terms of my reaction. But yeah, I suppose it's, it's the challenge. I've come from being a workaholic where I feel guilty if I'm not working between a certain time. So, there's people who have their remote work and that kind of stuff, the digital nomads and all the rest of it. My brain is so wired to, you work these hours to these hours, and anything outside of that, that's your free time. So trying to flip that is a bit challenging for me.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think it's so dependent on each circumstance. It depends on your family and your needs and wants and desires, and the amount of time that you like your own company and need your own company. Some people need more of that than others. So it's so personal. There's no kind of one way of doing it. It's finding what works, I think, for each person.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too for me is the nature of my job is things can happen suddenly and quickly, and I've got to be dynamic and I've got to be responsive. So I might have a Wednesday afternoon off, but it doesn't mean I'm not having to work because something's transpired that requires me to respond urgently and immediately, and that's just what I do. So, when you're in this sector, I laugh because these fake buyer agents coming in are like, I'm going to do it part-time and I want to be a buyer's agent because it's easier than being a selling agent. It's like, what are you talking about? You can't do it part-time, and it's still 6 days a week, because deals don't wait for you at your convenience while you're still working your day job. And the selling agent's going to sell the property to someone else because you're not getting your act together and responding on behalf of your client because you're busy earning your income,
Yeah, wow.
And why would you possibly think it's easier than being a selling agent? Because if you get it wrong, you're going to get sued, whereas all a selling agent has to do is sell a property for the price and the terms that the vendor wants, and once that's done, that's it.
Yeah, there's this extra level of responsibility.
Oh, it's huge. And most of these people coming in are ignorant and naive to that because they've been sold the pitch that you can be a buyer's agent and it's really easy and you can do it part-time and you can make easy money and,
I always find that interesting, that the part-time versus full-time, because it's just, I know, especially if you're working for yourself and you're working from home, it's like so much of what I do is life and behavior and decisions. And it's like, I don't know when I'm not, like when I'm, because even when I'm sleeping, I'm dreaming about clients. I'm imagining things that we're doing. It's like, when is it actually off? But I adore what I do, so it feels like I'm just kind of waking up and doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't feel like work.
It
Yeah.
doesn't, but it also means that sometimes there's some gray areas. So it's, I
Yeah.
don't know if you have that feeling as well, where it's like, okay, this is actually time off. Um, but I think that's something that, all of us these days with social media and just the way that things are socially, it can be a tricky one to find that kind of point of, okay, now it's finished.
Yeah. And certainly in my sector, there's information overload. There's constantly articles being thrown at you about what's going on in the industry and the market every day. And it's a case of consciously choosing what you will and won't read and what you will or won't get hooked into. Because, you start reading something and then an hour and a half later, you've lost that time of your life. And did you get distracted and go off to something that wasn't relevant? So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges in business nowadays, is to run your business without getting sucked down that rabbit hole of scrolling on social media or just continuing to go from one thing that's linked to the next, that's linked to the next, and forgetting time, just losing time.
Yeah, it's finding the full stops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's creating them.
Very true.
Then it's adhering to them.
Very true. And that is why we have ways to remind each other, which actually brings me into the next topic, which is all about the six selves. So you're also part of our beautiful community where we meet and we meditate and we stop and reflect and pause and have that level of self-inquiry. And I would love to ask you if you're happy to share with us what your favorite self is. So bear with me. I'm more than happy just to bring it up on the screen, just to jog your memory.
I can see it behind you.
You can. Have you already got yours? Have you chosen yours?
Yeah, the emotional self.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And can you share with us why? What is it that speaks to you about that self?
Look, I think because it's so much of what I do in my role, helping others, and to a degree, I'm counselling clients along the journey of buying. So there's wish list, there's reality, and we need to go from here to there, and it's everything that happens in between.
Yeah.
And, I do have to challenge people in their thinking, and it can be emotional, it can be confronting for people. So it's imperative that if someone's going to work with a buyer's agent, they have to have a high degree of emotional intelligence to know and understand how to work through each stage and work through each situation. Because, people have their dreams and may not be aligned with reality, but you've still got to be able to gently guide them and help them make good decisions. And I think from memory, the one about the emotional self is, we're all human beings, we're all emotional. Things happen to us in which we react, we respond. And I think from memory, that talks about being triggered. And it's having to, I suppose, be awareness of that triggering, managing the emotional response to that triggering, taking a breath, being aware of it, processing it. And then hopefully next time it comes up, you're not necessarily responding the same way. But it is something that I suppose is probably one of the areas in life that can and does force you to grow, to either choose to grow as a result of what comes up, or there are people who simply choose never to. They choose to stay emotionally immature, stuck in the position that they're in with the opinion that they've got or a fixed view on something, and they're forever in that space. Yeah. And not willing to move out of it. And that's their prerogative and that's their choice. But, the journey is a lot more interesting in life if you're willing to hold up the mirror, have a look at yourself, and then, deal with stuff, heal stuff, move on.
Well said. And I think, being in business, there's a natural personal development journey anyway, because every day we're faced with decisions and different emotions and personalities. And yeah.
And I'm dealing with, I'm dealing with a client, I'm dealing with real estate agents. They're an interesting breed when you have to deal with them from a buyer's agent perspective. Early on in the day, it was probably more of an issue being a female dealing with some of the guys because there's a lot of narcissists in the industry. Then there's staffing issues, franchisees, contractors, consultants, whoever you've got in the mix. So, life would be easy if you didn't have to deal with other people.
But sometimes lonely, but in some ways easier, yes.
But the fact of the matter is, short of being a monk living in a cave on a mountaintop, that's never going to be anyone's life. Exactly. And if you're in business, you're absolutely going to have to deal with people in some form or another. Doesn't mean it's always easy. Doesn't mean there aren't issues to deal with. Doesn't mean there's never any conflict. Yeah. And I suppose the journey for me has been looking at the situations that have come my way and then figuring out, okay, how do I respond to this? How do I manage this? How do I navigate this situation? What do I need to say? How do I extract myself? How do I say thank you, but no thank you, I don't think we're suited to working together. And for me, it's been certainly setting boundaries. For me, it's been having the choice and the option to not say yes to everyone just because they might want to work with me. Doesn't mean I particularly want to work with them. So
yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? The saying no for a lot of women. That's a really challenging piece of the puzzle.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the red flags, and particularly men don't like that at times when I've very politely sort of considered my situation, gone, thank you, but I don't think we're a fit. And then the venom that comes back because an ego's been bruised as a result of me saying thanks, but no thanks. Then that's the red flag that's actually showing itself that I'm like, great, tick that one, good, made a good decision, move on.
Yeah, isn't it interesting when you see those their reaction is giving you that feedback that your intuition was actually correct.
Yeah, and that's part of it. If you're confident in your intuition, and that's like a muscle, you need to build it and become confident in it. It's actually listening to it. So, 10 years ago, I probably didn't listen to it as much as I do now. And now I'm more selective. And sometimes, when you go against that red flag and you convince yourself it'll be okay, there's always the lesson that you should have listened to it in the first place.
I'm wondering, do you think, like, does that intuition, in your opinion, does that heighten, do you think, with aging and with wisdom? Because I'm seeing so many sassy, switched on, young women in their 20s. And I just think I personally had no real clue in my 20s. I'm growing into myself in my 40s, and my intuition's always been there. That's a whole, I guess there's intuition versus intuition. There's different kind of ways of speaking about it. But for you, do you feel like it's heightened as you've aged?
I think the journey of life enables you to develop wisdom, whether you use your intuition along that journey or not. It depends on the individual, whether you listen and respect it versus ignore it and go down the path of, where you probably shouldn't have gone, and you learn that you shouldn't have done that. So I think it's a couple of things. There's a reason why the crone, older women have often been referred to sort of as a crone, because they are older, and it is the journey of life and the wisdom they've developed throughout that journey that is highly valuable. So there's always something to be said for somebody who's older and lived a whole lot of experience in their lifetime that creates and contributes to that book of wisdom that we grow within ourselves. I'm sure there are a lot of younger people out there, particularly if they've been brought up with this digital age and all quite savvy and all the rest of it. Doesn't mean they're not going to have their challenges, doesn't mean they're not going to have karma play out, doesn't mean they're not going to have experiences that they're going to have to deal with. Whether or not they listen to their intuition, who knows? I guess we've all got our own journey. You can't really compare yours to somebody else's. You don't want to, because we always have this bad habit of comparing to someone up. We never compare down and go, oh my God, how lucky am I compared to all of these other people? And that's the better one to do, because when you compare up, you're always going to be dissatisfied with yourself. So you're best not to compare or be grateful. And you can develop that gratitude by comparing down and seeing really the position that you're in compared to so many other people. Yeah, I think intuition can be tapped into at any stage. I know when I was younger, I didn't trust mine. I didn't really know how it came to me. I made the mistake of thinking I had to have a gut feel. But what I've learned since then are there are different ways in which people's intuition comes to them.
Yes.
And we can have one way that's stronger than other ways, and we can have multiple ways in terms of how we might receive that knowledge. So I think it's just some people obviously are born with a really clear intuition. Others maybe have a longer journey to get to knowing and understanding it, refining it, and working with it.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thank you so much. Miriam, what advice do you have for others who are creating a business that serves both their world and their hearts?
Yeah, I just think make sure that you understand why you're doing it. It's kind of that intersection of what is it you want to bring together? What are you passionate about? Find two passions and see how you can align them. For me, my passion was investing in, I think, property or advice and property. So ultimately, that's how I sort of got really clear on what I wanted to do and also the content around my book. But I guess it's, do a lot of planning, do research. If you're getting an intuitive pull, that's great, but take your time, do your research, investigate it, do your budgeting, figure out a process of how you're going to navigate going from here to there, particularly if you're doing it after hours to start with and you're doing it while you're otherwise employed. And just remember that it's kind of like, the result at the end is like baking a cake. If you don't have all the right ingredients in there to begin with, you're not going to come out with the best cake at the end. So you're always better off spending more time on the planning and getting it ready before launching than actually let's race to launch and what have we left out and the whole cake collapses kind of thing.
Yes, I've had that experience before.
So look, system, structures, guidance, who you need, why do you need them, what's urgent, what's important, what's a priority, what's the budget, what are you going to deal with, when you're going to deal with it, and then, go from there.
Beautiful. Such an amazing conversation, so many wonderful pearls of wisdom. Thank you for your time and your energy and your heart. We appreciate you.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
If you resonate with what we're about and you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're listening to us, please leave a review and share the episode with someone who you believe could benefit from what has been discussed. Thank you so much for your support. See you soon. The information provided on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, health, or financial advice. Always consult with a qualified health professional or financial advisor before making any decisions related to your personal health or finances.